Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and I'm here with Mitch Reed from No Dice, No Glory. How you doing, Mitch?
Hey Liz, how's it going?
It's going great because we are here to introduce y'all to Akar Bharadvaj, the designer of Tyranny of Blood. This game title is just so good.
I think that's why he did so well. I think the name is just awesome.
And
it's not about vampires, but there is blood sucking going on, but I'm not going to explain that.
Yes. So why don't you, Akar, tell us the basics of this game?
So my game is about, so you might get a different perception based on the name Tyranny of Blood, but it is actually about the social structure of India under British colonialism and the way it responded and changed during that time period, specifically looking at the Indian caste system as kind of the model for the social structure. And so the blood that is referenced in the title is more the genealogical type of blood rather than literal blood, and it's reference to the tyranny of birth and what that means when that reflects your status in life.
Are there miniatures? No, okay.
There can be.
So mechanically though, what is going on in this game? So what can people expect mechanism wise if they were to pick this up in the future?
So the game is it's a card driven game. So it's the basic concept is very loosely based on Here I Stand, if anyone's played that, and in the sense that you go around, you play cards for either the action points or events, but the more mechanically the basic concept of the game, it's very asymmetric, and so it's 4 players only at this point. Each one controls a different sector of society and has a different source of victory points. We have the Brahmins, who are in charge of education, of religion. We have the Kshatriya, who are in charge of warfare and politics. We have the Vaishya, who are in charge of they're the merchants and the traders. They're in charge of the economy. And then we have the Shudra / Dalit player, who is in charge of labor. And so each group has different sources of power and different sources of victory points.
So Akar, what motivated you to hit this topic? Why this topic? What about it was so interesting that drew you in that you just had to create a game about it?
So I'm an Indian American extraction, so India's history is very interesting to me. My academic background, especially in undergrad, was studying colonial, anti-colonial movements and processes of decolonization. So kind of the big thing that drew me to this topic was I'm used to a lot of games kind of focusing on the so-called great man theory of history. Mm-hmm. And just focusing on a handful of people who, presidents, prime ministers, generals, etc., who kind of run things by their own decision-making processes. And I was more interested in thinking about what was it like to live under British colonialism as an Indian, and what were your incentives there, and what did that mean? And from a sort of a colonial perspective, I think, especially in board gaming, there's a lot of games about colonialism. Recently, there's been a lot of games about anti-colonialism, but I think in real life, the things are more nuanced than that. And I think a lot of people were totally willing to work with a colonial structure, either out of necessity or just because that's what was important to them. So in the game specifically, the British are not necessarily the bad guys. They're a force that all the players will have to work with in order to improve their own stature in society. And I think that's a story I hadn't really seen that much before.
Yeah, it's definitely. So I'm gonna just tell everybody here I'm a little bit of a cheater. I have played this, so I'm gonna try to keep my effusion to a minimum.
Ooh, all right. So we're getting some early positive reports, but that's no surprise. I mean, you are in the final 8. So yeah, Akar, I mean, speaking of nepotism and everything, so we know that Mitch was your mentor. Did he mentor you through was this your very first game design, or is this something that's been in development for a while, so Mitch didn't get a chance to ruin it? Or, what kind of process are we looking at for you?
I actually played very little with it, so whatever positive thing he's going to say now, he's just being nice.
No, so I started designing this game for this competition. I had not touched it before. I had never I'd always kind of wanted to design a game, but I had never really seriously worked towards one before. And Mitch was, despite his protests, was very helpful through this whole process. He it's a great soundboard, great kind of sanity check on certain things, like making sure this game is actually fun and makes sense and is respectful to its subject matter. So he's been great for that.
Excellent. Is Tyranny of Blood also your very first design ever? Or had you tried before and this was like a special for this contest design?
No, this is my first board game design. I was cleaning out my room at my parents' house and I found a board game I designed when I was probably 8 years old. That's my first design since becoming an adult.
What was that called? Ernie and Bert find the ducky?
It's about spiders trying to escape from a lab or something. I don't know. I forget what it's called.
That could be your second game.
Maybe.
We're on First Blood Part 2 now.
Yeah, First Blood. So as you started putting the game together, what was like the biggest challenge? Because the game is really deep in history. I had to look up some of the stuff just so I can get some background in it. But what was it the mechanics? What gave you the biggest challenge?
So I think the most challenging part of designing this game was making sure that I was staying respectful to a difficult topic, and I wanted to kind of portray the subject matter with a level of historical accuracy, and I wanted it to be a fun game, but I also wanted it to feel miserable occasionally, because it's about something that made a lot of people miserable and still affects a lot of people today. So there's a balance, and it's also a very complicated subject matter. So it's a balance of maintaining that level of complexity without making it too simple in a way that would be disrespectful. It was also a challenge to make a fair game about a fundamentally unfair system. And that was a challenge. And I dealt with that by making it so the winner is not the person with the most power at the end of the game. It's the person who has done the most to swing India into its own image by the time India reaches independence.
Oh, that is super interesting. So what kind of research went into this game, and what was the most fun thing that you discovered in that process?
So I was a history major in undergrad, so this is like a coming home for me. It's been a while since I was in undergrad, so it was kind of nice to do this again. I basically just picked up a ton of books, and there's a lot of books about the subject, and a lot of them are very bad. And so I think there's a lot of very Orientalist texts, especially 1800s and early 1900s, kind of using the caste system, like understanding it as this completely fixed system that hasn't changed for thousands of years. And when it has, I mean, things have shifted over time. Different aspects of society have become more important or less important. And so these things always change. So that was a challenge. And I basically, I mean, this contest is kind of a contracted time constraint. So a lot of this was I read about 600 pages one weekend, and then just kept researching from there. But that was good to kind of form the basis of my thesis and develop some argumentation there.
Are there any sort of historical figures or events that you developed a particular attachment to that make an appearance in the game?
Well, so my game, I mean, it's again, it's not really focused on specific personalities. I think the thing that kind of struck me the most was just understanding the system as it played out, and just thinking about the implications, for my family and for my upbringing in particular, like what that means, what it means to. I mean, I'm from one of the higher castes, and this is something that I have to deal with. It's something terrible that my family probably played a part in, and just kind of thinking about it from that perspective.
Looking at this game, and your target market, I think personally that a lot of people are going to learn. I learned a lot from playing this game and helping you out with it. Is that something that, as you started this project, was a goal of yours?
Yes, that is honestly one of the primary goals of mine was
To make
teach
Mitch Reed
people.
learn. Right, I got
Yes.
it. A lot of people have failed there. Yeah.
And not just learn, because I think one of the special things about games is yeah, it's a good way to learn facts and figures, but it's an even better way of kind of building empathy. And I think it's I don't know that there's a better art form that lets you do that. And so uh I hope that people, when they play their game, they can understand, you know, what was it, a little bit of understanding, like what was it like to be oppressed by a system like this? What were the reasons that other people were this oppressive, you know? And a big part of my thesis was is that the caste system changed a lot under British rule for the worse, to be more restrictive. And I think it was basically people felt a loss of dignity and power when the British took over, and that led them to kind of oppress people who were, so to speak, below them on in the class hierarchy. So yep, so education's a big part of why I wanted to make this game.
Yeah, it hits the mark.
So you mentioned that this game involved confronting some sort of difficult aspects of your own past and your family's past. So is your family aware of what went into this game? Have you played it with your parents, and what kind of reception did you get?
I have not played with my parents, but my parents and my sister and her husband are very supportive, and they've been very supportive of me through this whole process. I think yeah, so I was talking to my parents about what caste meant for them, and I think especially, you know, they were born a few years after India declared independence, and things were changing a lot, and they take a lot of pride in my grandfather, for instance. He always ate with everybody, and that was kind of scandalous back then. You were very selective with who you invited into your home and ate dinner with. So they've been very supportive in that regard, and I'm very thankful for that. I am worried about controversy more broadly, especially among you know, people of Indian descent. But I hope that if they actually play their game, they'll understand that there's a level of nuance and subtlety here that they can learn from and appreciate.
Hey, you can't have good history without some risk. So
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm gonna just ask a general question about Zenobia. So far through this process, and you know, obviously you're doing very well in it. What would you say to other game designers if there was a Zenobia Part 2, which I was telling Vocal, you have to have that.
Yes.
What do you think of the process, and would you recommend it to others?
I would 100% recommend it to others, especially, you know, if you're like me and you've been on the fence and you just needed something to light a fire under your butt to get you going. I would say the time limitations are very, very tight, especially, you know, if you have a day job. So I would say if you are interested in Zenobia 2, start today, because you're going to need every minute that you can. And it's, yeah, especially that there was about a 2-month span between getting feedback and having to design a prototype that were just very, very tight. And I was spending, after an 8-hour workday, I was spending 4 or 5 hours working on the game every day. So that was a lot, and I would have appreciated a little more time. But yes, 100% do it. If this is something you've tangentially wanted to do, just do it.
fantastic. So having gone through the game design process, do you consider yourself someone who would do this again? Like, do you want to design another game? Have you started having ideas for other games now that you've done one?
Yes, absolutely. I've had a few ideas that I'm going to keep to myself for now, but definitely thinking of some concepts and trying to figure out how I could build those out. And again, I've little time trying to meet this Wednesday deadline, but I'm hoping once this competition's done, I can kind of keep going with this and see where it goes.
Yeah, and that's something, you know, from playing the game. Once again, I'm not a fair interviewer here. That I think those basic mechanics, as I was learning how to play it, I'm like, this really can have some applications elsewhere. And I think the mechanics are very sound. So I don't know if any of these ideas are using somewhat of the same mechanics, but you know, the game plays seamlessly. I know when I first looked at it, I'm like, whoa, this is going to be hard. And a lot of it's because I just didn't know a lot about the subject matter. But once we started playing it, and I have to add Jeff Comavis and Phil Bolger, who also played with us, and Liz, you know them as well, that I found the game a lot of fun. And, you know, the mechanics are sound.
Every time you research history, you end up thinking about implications for today. And, you know, I live in the United States in the 2020s, and it's kind of there's a lot of inequality now. There's a lot of social tensions and conflict. And so it's definitely a thing that kind of struck me through this whole process was what does this mean both for the history, and what does this mean for us now? And what can we do to kind of build up equity and diminish some of these differences we have?
So this is your second interview. I don't know what order these are going to come out in, but I heard that you've been talking with all the 8 finalists have been talking to one another, and
Yes.
You've been trading idea, you know, like talking about your games. So if you couldn't play your game, which of the other 7 games that you've heard about from the other contestants are you most interested in?
I would love to play all 7 of the other games, but I would
Good
say
answer.
I don't know. I would choose. There's a couple games about history that I don't know anything about, and I think those might appeal to me the most, just because I would love just to learn about these things. But yeah, I mean, I love all the other ones. I think the one there's one called Molly Houses that's kind of interesting, and it seemed like a very emotional experience, and I'd love to try that out. But really, all of them.
So have you felt like, you know, I know we always, you know, we're in the United States, we have reality TV, you know, I'm not here to make friends, but it sounds like people who have participated in the Zenobia Award have actually really developed a strong bond. Is that something that surprised you? I mean, was it there from day one? Was everybody just enthusiastic to talk, or did it develop over these last months?
So we've had a Discord channel for the Zenobia Award broadly. And I wasn't too involved in that discussion until pretty recently. I know the forum was pretty active, but I think really once we got to the finalist stage, I reached out to the other finalists because I think and I'm pleasantly surprised to answer your question that we're all very kind of cooperative, and I think all of us are more interested in playing 8 or more amazing games than we are. I mean, I'd like to win, but if I don't, I would having a bunch of amazing games come out of this is another great award. So everyone's great that I've talked to, and I'm really happy everyone's supportive.
So you mentioned that Here I Stand was one of the influences for this game. What other games made you want to design a game? What is your personal taste like as a player, and does it come out in Tyranny of Blood?
I think mechanically it does. I think probably my favorite games are CDGs. So in that sense, it reflects on the game. And Here I Stand sort of inspired the asymmetry, the concept that not everyone cares specifically about everything that goes on the board. But yeah, I mean, some of my favorite games are Here I Stand, Twilight Struggle. I love Twilight Imperium as well. It's hard to get those big hulking games on the table as much, but
Oh yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
yes, I actually picked up. You mentioned This Guilty Land. I picked that up, and I picked up the Vote, which is about women's suffrage, and I picked that up right before the pandemic hit, so I haven't gotten a chance to play either of those. But otherwise, I would love to see how someone else dealt with this aspect of inequality and what it means for a game. And there's also another game, Votes for Women, coming out soon that handles the same topic. I'd love to play that one as well.
Votes for Women. Who does that game? I never heard of it.
It is there you go.
Yeah, it was you know, we always got to mention Kevin because he's an awesome guy. And we all actually, Kevin and Jason Matthews, also involved with Zenobia, took Akar and I out to the baseball game. I think it was a week ago tomorrow, 2 weeks ago, right?
Yes.
And we had a really good time. And that's all we're going to say about that.
That's all that needs to be said.
It's all that needs to be said, right?
So, Akar, I have a question. So you mentioned that you studied history in school and that this was sort of getting you back in touch with the research that you were doing. Do you in some ways feel that making this game also sort of developed you as a historian? And, you know, what was your experience of designing a game that made a historical statement, and what kind of special considerations went into that?
So I mean, it felt exactly, or maybe not exactly, but it felt a lot like writing a paper, especially early on. You know, it's gathering information, formulating an argument. I thought it was interesting, you know, not just dealing with the thesis and adding evidence to that, but really creating a model that creates like a simple simulation. And I think that's something my brain has always kind of worked towards. I'm kind of a big picture guy, so it's that was something that is like, what part of this information is useful, what part's not, and how do we strip everything down to the bone? And so I think that sort of process has been great as someone who's very fascinated in history, just to kind of make that argument a completely different way. And I've never written a history paper for fun, but this is a good substitute.
Yeah, is that something that kind of surprised you? It's just more of a general question. Every gamer I know can write a better game than any game that's ever been created, but they just don't. Do you think people don't realize how hard it is?
Yes, but I also think it was kind of, I would almost say some of it was easier in a certain way. I think like once I started playing out different concepts, and, you know, I got a bunch of paper together, a bunch of pieces from an old Settlers of Catan set, and just kind of moved them around. And I think once I started doing that, there were a lot of things that made sense. And it was really just, I think when you come up with a system like that has its own rules, I think that's kind of, you can make that as a structure for a game. I think that part of it was slightly easier than I'd expected. I think everything else was a million times harder than I'd expected.
You worked very hard on this game, so that's why I figured I'd ask that.
Thanks. Yeah, I remember I think Mark Herman tweeted out that once a couple years ago that he came up with the basic structure of a game. It was like on a Monday. He said, "Oh, this weekend I came up with a basic structure of a game. Now I just need to do the hard part over the next 2 years." It's all the balancing and everything.
Yeah, it's not easy stuff.
That's awesome. So I'm going to ask you just a softball question now, which is, what have you been playing lately that's fun?
I've been playing a game called Tyranny of Blood. You might have heard of it. I say that sort of as a joke. That's probably been the saddest thing is since getting vaccinated, I've wanted to get back out there and play a bunch of games, but I've had to spend so much time on my own. So I'm hoping.
You did play a game about a month ago.
I did.
Yeah.
I played a very good miniatures game.
No, it's okay. All I can tell you is don't give Akar your German scouting fleet.
I will sink your German scouting fleet.
Yes. And he was their admiral. So yeah, we met up at Sebastian Bay's place. We played with the Goose folks and played, and that was awesome. And you know, you live close, man. So we're gonna have to start playing a lot more.
Yes, definitely. I have played a couple games. I think getting to see my friends in person for the first time in a while, we played some of our old favorites, which were Twilight Imperium and Here I Stand. But I'm hoping to get a lot more out there. I've like a lot of people, I've spent the money that I was supposed to spend traveling. I spent it all on games, so I'm hoping to actually get those to the table soon.
No regrets.
No regrets.
So, Akar, where can people find you online if they want to ask you more questions about Tyranny of Blood? Are you a man of mystery? Do you have social media?
I don't really have much of a social media presence. I have a LinkedIn account. That's about it. If you want to come talk to me. But
should Liz and I act as your press agent if you need to get in touch with him? You could reach me or Liz from Beyond Solitaire, and we will try to get it to Mr. Esoteric.
I'd appreciate that.
Man of mystery.
No, it's honestly, you're not missing anything of import.
You're so not missing anything. I envy you, actually. I totally envy you.
I think every time I go on Twitter, there's just a giant fight over something that seems needless. So I'm trying to avoid that.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me. All right.
Yeah.
So as y'all know, you can find me anywhere on the internet as Beyond Solitaire. You can find Mitch as No Dice, No Glory. And Akar, thank you so much for coming on. It has been so wonderful to get to talk to you about your game.
Thanks for having me. I love your podcast, so it's great to be on here.
He's
Oh,
talking
thanks
to
so
you,
much.
Liz, not me.
It's always great to talk to you, buddy.
But thank you so much. Good luck with your game, and happy gaming, everybody.
Happy gaming.